Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, everyone.
Today, we are going to continue with our reading of the encyclical, The Truth and Meaning of Human Sexuality, Guidelines for Education Within the Family. For those that are following along, we are in section 3, In the Light of Vocation. The family carries about a decisive role in cultivating and developing all vocations, as the Second Vatican Council taught. From the marriage of Christians, there comes the family, in which new citizens of human society are born, and by the grace of the Holy Spirit in baptism, those are made children of God, so that the people of God may be perpetuated throughout the centuries. In what might be regarded as the domestic church, the parents, by word and example, are the first heralds of the faith with regard to their children. They must foster the vocation which is proper to each child, and this with special care if it be to religion. Yet the very fact that vocations flourish is the sign of adequate pastoral care of the family. Where there is an effective and enlightened family apostolate, just as it becomes normal to accept life as a gift from God, so it is easier for God's voice to resound and to find a more generous hearing. Here we are dealing with vocations to marriage, or to virginity or celibacy, but these are always vocations to holiness. Indeed, the document Lumen Gentium presents the Second Vatican Council's teaching on the universal call to holiness. Strengthened by so many and such great means of salvation, all the faithful, whatever their condition or state, though each in his own way, are called by the Lord to that perfection of sanctity by which the Father himself is perfect.
Number 1, the vocation to marriage. Formation for true love is always the best preparation for the vocation to marriage. In the family, children and young people can learn to live human sexuality within the solid context of Christian life. They can gradually discover that a stable Christian marriage cannot be regarded as a matter of convenience or mere sexual attraction. By the fact that it is a vocation, marriage must invoke a carefully considered choice, a mutual commitment before God, and the constant seeking of his help in prayer.
Called to married love. Committed to the task of educating their children for love, Christian parents, first of all, can take awareness of their married love as a reference point. As the encyclical Humanae Vitae states, such love reveals its true nature and nobility when it is considered in its supreme origin, God, who is love. 1 John 4:8. The Father from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, Ephesians 3:15. Marriage is not then the effect of chance or the product of evolution of unconscious natural forces. It is the wise institution of the Creator to realize in mankind his design of love. By means of the reciprocal personal gift of self, proper and exclusive to them, husband and wife tend towards the communion of their beings in view of mutual personal perfection, to collaborate with God in the generation and education of new lives. For baptized persons, moreover, marriage invests the dignity of a sacramental sign of grace, inasmuch as it represents the union of Christ and of the Church. The Holy Father's letter to the families recalls that the family is in fact a community of persons whose proper way of existing and living together is communion, communio personarum. Going back to the teaching of the Second Vatican Council, the Holy Father teaches that such a communion involves a certain similarity between the union of the divine persons and the union of God's children in truth and love. This rich and meaningful formation, first of all, confirms what is central to the identity of every man and every woman. This identity consists in the capacity to live in truth and love. Even more, it consists in the need of truth and love as an essential dimension of the life of the person. Man's need for truth and love opens him both to God and to creatures. It opens him to other people, to life in communion, and in particular to marriage and to the family.
As the encyclical Humanity affirms, married love has 4 characteristics. It is human love, physical and spiritual. It is total, faithful, and fruitful love. These characteristics are founded on the fact that in marriage, man and woman are so firmly united as to become, to use the words of the book of Genesis, one flesh. Genesis 2:24. Male and female in their physical constitution, the two human subjects, even though physically different, share equally in the capacity to live in truth and love. This capacity, characteristic of the human being as a person, has at the same time both a spiritual and a bodily dimension. The family which results from this union draws its inner solidity from the covenant between the spouses, which Christ raised to a sacrament. The family draws its proper character as a community, its traits of communion from that fundamental communion of the spouses, which is prolonged in their children. Will you accept children lovingly from God and bring them up according to the law of Christ and his church? The celebrant asks during the rite of marriage. The answer given by the spouses reflects the most profound truth of the love which unites them. With the same formula, spouses commit themselves and promise to be faithful forever, because their fidelity really flows from this communion of persons, which is rooted in the plan of the Creator, in Trinitarian love, and in the sacrament which expresses the faithful union between Christ and the Church.
Christian marriage is a sacrament whereby sexuality is integrated into a path to holiness through a bond reinforced by the indissoluble unity of the sacrament. The gift of the sacrament is at the same time a vocation and commandment for the Christian spouses, that they may remain faithful to each other forever, beyond every trial and difficulty, in generous obedience to the holy will of the Lord. What therefore God has joined together, let no man put asunder.
Parents face a current concern. Unfortunately, even in Christian societies today, parents have reason to be concerned about the stability of their children's future marriages. Nevertheless, in spite of the rising number of divorces and the growing crisis of the family, they should respond with optimism, committing themselves to give their children a deep Christian formation to make them able to overcome various difficulties. Actually, the love for chastity, which parents help to form, favors mutual respect between man and woman and provides a capacity for compassion, tolerance, generosity, and above all, a spirit of sacrifice, without which love cannot endure. Children will thus come to marriage with that realistic wisdom about which St. Paul speaks when he teaches that husband and wife must continually give way to one another in love, cherishing one another with mutual patience and affection. 1 Corinthians 7:3-6 and Ephesians 5:21-23.
Through this remote formation for chastity in the family, adolescents and young people learn to live sexuality in its personal dimension, rejecting any kind of separation of sexuality from love, understood as self-giving and any separation of the love between husband and wife from the family. Parental respect for life and the mystery of procreation will spare the child or young person from the false idea that the two dimensions of the conjugal act, unitive and procreative, can be separated at will. Thus, the family comes to be recognized as an inseparable part of the vocation to marriage. A Christian education for chastity within the family cannot remain silent about the moral gravity involved in separating the unitive dimension from the procreative dimension within married life. This happens above all in contraception and artificial procreation. In the first case, one intends to seek sexual pleasure, intervening in the conjugal act to avoid conception. In the second case, conception is sought by substituting the conjugal act with a technique. These are actions contrary to the truth of married love and contrary to full communion between husband and wife. Forming young people for chastity should thus become a preparation for responsible fatherhood and motherhood, which directly concern the moment in which a man and a woman, uniting themselves in one flesh, can become parents. This is a moment of special value both for their interpersonal relationship and for their service to life. They can become parents, father and mother, by communicating life to a new human being. The two dimensions of conjugal union, the unitive and the procreative, cannot be artificially separated without damaging the deepest truth of the conjugal act itself. It is also necessary to put before young people the consequences, which are always very serious, of separating sexuality from procreation when someone reaches the stage of practicing sterilization and abortion or pursuing sexual activity disassociated from married love, before and outside of marriage. Much of the moral order and marital harmony of the family, hence also the true good of society, depends on its timely education, which finds its place in God's plan, in the very structure of sexuality and the intimate nature of marriage.
Parents who carry out their own right and duty to form their children for chastity can be certain that they are helping them in turn to build stable and united families, thus anticipating, insofar as this is possible, the joys of paradise. How can I ever express the happiness of the marriage that is joined together by the church, strengthened by an offering, sealed by a blessing, announced by angels, and ratified by the Father? They are both brethren and both fellow servants. There is no separation between them in spirit or flesh. Christ rejoices in them, and he sends them his peace. Where the couple is, there he is also to be found. And where he is, evil can no longer abide.
The vocation to virginity and celibacy. Christian revelation presents the two vocations to love, marriage and virginity. In some societies today, not only marriage and the family, but also vocations to the priesthood and religious life are often in a state of crisis. The two situations are inseparable. When marriage is not esteemed, neither can consecrated virginity or celibacy exist. When human sexuality is not regarded as a great value given by the Creator, the renunciation of it for the sake of the kingdom of heaven loses its meaning. A lack of vocations follows from the breakdown of the family. Yet where parents are generous in welcoming life, children will be more likely to be generous when it comes to the question of offering themselves to God. Family must once again express a generous love for life and place themselves at its service above all by accepting the children which the Lord wants to give them with a sense of responsibility, not detached from peaceful trust. And they may bring this acceptance to fulfillment not only through a continuing educational effort, but also through an obligatory commitment, at times perhaps neglected, to help teenagers, especially young people, to accept the vocational dimension of every living being. Within God's plan, human life acquires fullness when it becomes a self-gift, a gift which can express itself in matrimony, in consecrated virginity, in self-dedication to one's neighbor towards an ideal, or in the choice of priestly ministry. Parents will truly serve the life of their children if they help make their own lives a gift, respecting their mature choices and fostering joyfully each vocation, including the religious and priestly one. When he deals with sexual education in Familiaris Consortio, this is why Pope John Paul II affirms, indeed, Christian parents, discerning the signs of God's call, will devote special attention and care to education in virginity or celibacy as the supreme form of that self-giving that constitutes the very meaning of human sexuality.
Parents in priestly or religious vocations. Parents should therefore rejoice if they see in any of their children the sign of God's call to the higher vocation of virginity or celibacy for the love of the kingdom of heaven. They should accordingly adapt formation for chaste love to the needs of those children, encouraging them on their own path up to the time of entering the seminary or house of formation, or until the specific call to self-giving with an undivided heart matures. They must respect and appreciate the freedom of each of their children, encouraging their personal vocation and without trying to impose a predetermined vocation on them. The Second Vatican Council clearly set out this distinct and honorable task of parents who are supported in their work by teachers and priests. Parents should nurture and protect religious vocations in their children by educating them in Christian virtues. The duty of fostering vocations falls on the whole Christian community. The greatest contribution is made by families, which are animated by a spirit of faith, charity, and piety, and which provide, as it were, a first seminary, and by parishes in whose abundant life the young people themselves take an active part. Parents, teachers, and all who are in any way concerned in the education of boys and young men ought to train them in such a way that they will know the solicitude of the Lord for his flock and to be alive to the needs of the church. In this way, they will be prepared when the Lord calls to answer generously with the prophet, "Here am I, send me." Isaiah 6:8. This necessary family context for maturing religious and priestly vocations brings to mind the serious situation of many families, especially in certain countries, families with an impoverished life because they have chosen to deprive themselves of children, or where they have only one child, a situation in which it is very difficult for vocations to arise and even difficult to develop a full social education.
The truly Christian family will also be able to communicate an understanding of the value of celibacy to unmarried children or those who are incapable of marriage for reasons apart from their own will. If they are formed well from childhood and during their youth, they will be equipped to face their own situation more easily. Likewise, they will be able to discover the will of God in such a situation and so find a sense of vocation and peace in their own lives. These persons, especially if they have some kind of physical disability, need to be shown the great possibilities for self-realization and spiritual fruitfulness, which are open to those who make a commitment to help their poorest and most needy brothers and sisters sustained by faith and the love of God. Okay. Yeah,
Wow.
that was great.
Yeah.
And I like the focus on making yourself a gift. Self-gift is what we are made for.
Mhm.
Do you want to start or do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I just had one note because I don't know, well, I'm pretty sure we talked about this before on the podcast, but in or section 26, it's like two smaller
Yes.
paragraphs in the very beginning.
Yes, I starred that.
Basically, I think in summary, like we don't choose our children's vocation and that we are called to create space and silence for them to learn to hear God's voice. And I think that's one of the things I got from this kind of reiterated. I've heard it before many times, but in the family, when they say like big families, the fruit of a big family can be vocation. The fruit of any size of a family could be and I'm talking religious vocation, could be a religious vocation. And I think because oftentimes in larger families, you can see with the numbers, and in most cases, I think this is true, that, they just trust God at a level that is very different from our culture. And the parents, in order to do that, you have to have a relationship with God, like striving to have a deep relationship with God. And so the couples and the families that I've encountered who are starting from that place, right? They're open to life. They have big families because they have this trust and relationship with God that they then cultivate in their family this life of silence and space and giving their children, not telling their children what to do, but providing them ample opportunity, whether it be going on retreats when they get older or just being young and taking them to church and the adoration chapel outside of mass time, like taking them to visit with the Lord and just sit and be there. And that's something I started doing a couple weeks ago, maybe longer than that now, but like encouraging because the twins, because of the ages of my kids, like encouraging Max to stay a little longer if he wants to. So like the twins can only last so long, So we'll get up and I'm like, Max, if you want to stay, and he's just, okay. And he'll just stay, not like the 10 longer, but I'm like, I really want him to know, like I'm bringing you here, but this is not, you're not doing this for me. Like I want you to just
He's
learn
free.
to listen. Right. Exactly. Right. So yeah, while I want all my boys to become priests, I recognize I have no control over that. And it's not my decision what their vocation is going to be. I want them to just hear God's voice and have peace and become who he's made them to be. And as a parent, you have to recognize that you might not know what that is.
Right. I do. I'm so glad you brought that up, and it made me think of the fact that you brought up the comment about the vocations can come from any family. And I'm sure we both could sit here and talk about different priests that we know that have really interesting stories. Maybe their families weren't as faithful as you would expect them to be, or whatever the case may be. And specifically, but one of my very best friends that we grew up together, and he was an only child. And that was not by choice. His parents have, later on mentioned to me, like they would have loved to have more babies. And they never really had an explanation of why that didn't happen. And they weren't expecting him to be a priest. That wasn't even on their radar. They were very surprised. And of course, they're very proud of him. But I just say that to say, like, God uses everything, right? And so, yes, I think this encyclical is so beautifully laid out. I love how it talks about how the home is a seminary. Like, that's so beautiful. But I also mentioned that story because just as Amy was saying, like we can't control our families. I mean, in the sense that if we are trying to live our faith, not contracepting, and we're open to God's will for our families, then we're open to however many babies he gives us. And maybe we would prefer more babies. And so just know that, you know, all all good things work together for those who love him, so just because you may not have a big family, that's okay. There still might be a vocation in your family. And so I think just by reading this, like I wouldn't ever want someone to just discount like my child's an only child, there's no way they're going to be a religious, because that's not the case. It's just not the case.
Right. I think the pastor at our parish, he's been a priest for 38 years. He's an only child. John Paul II, I think, is only one of two. He only had a
Correct.
brother.
He
So,
had a brother.
yeah, the size of the family doesn't matter so much as from what I got from this section, Emily, was that it's the parents' disposition, and
Yeah,
I
the
think I've mentioned this
environment.
before on the podcast, but like, are the parents falling in the right direction, right? Because we're all falling as sinners, but are we falling in the right direction or trying to fall in the right direction? I think it feels so encouraged by the church in this encyclical to know that, like, yes, we need direct instruction, but if you are just living, like I'm just walking around the house right now with my belly because I'm pregnant, and like my boys just come up and want to touch, and and sometimes I don't want to be touched, but like I have not told them to stop, and they want to kiss on my belly or touch my belly. Like no matter where we are, I really am like try to let them do that unless it like gets a little excessive. I'm like, okay, guys, we've said hi, let's leave them alone. But I don't know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Emily, but like from this, I'm just getting like, if by doing those things, and praying with my children and yeah, just falling, trying like that is doing a lot, that the Lord is able to move through all of that. And I think that's just so encouraging. And then of course, apart from those things, right? Like apart from me even responding to God's grace on a daily basis, because I know oftentimes he gives me grace that I fail to respond to, he's still able to work in my children's lives. There is nothing
Absolutely.
I can do as a parent, really. I
Absolutely.
mean, if
Absolutely.
God wants my children more than I want my children. Like God wants their vocation more than I want their vocation. Like he is just more powerful than I am. And that being said, there are a lot of ways that parents can encourage and or discourage vocation discernment in their children. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It,
and yeah.
no, yeah, please finish.
No, I think especially the idea that, somehow we would that our children would get from us, that pick up a message from us that somehow a religious vocation is a waste of their life or their gift or their talents, when in fact we know that it is the highest calling, like to renounce for the sake of the kingdom. So, yeah.
Right. To add, or just to elaborate on that first section, 26, that last line in the first paragraph, um, yet the very fact that vocations flourish is the sign of adequate pastoral care of the family, where there is an effective and enlightened family apostolate, just as it becomes normal to accept life as a gift from God, so it is easier for God's voice to resound and to find a more generous hearing. Those words put together in that sentence were just, I mean, that was striking,
Oh, I agree. Totally.
So
Yeah. Beautifully
beautiful.
written. Absolutely.
So
And I
beautiful.
think I'm glad you highlighted that exact sentence because that's a little soapbox moment for me here. And that is one of the things that I have experienced frustration with sometimes when I hear priests and people bemoan the lack of faithful vocations, religious vocations. And then you look at the parish and there's nothing for families. There's no NFP instruction. There's no preaching from the pulpit about the demand of the parent role in the children's life and openness to life. I feel like if you want life in the world of religious vocation, you need to have life in the family. And again, this doesn't go back to like the size, right? Necessarily the number of children. It's the disposition of the parents. So if we are watering down church teaching in our formation of couples during the engagement time, if we're not addressing it regularly, bringing it up, right? What is that called? What did I
Pre-Cana?
know before we were recording, Emily? Like,
Pre-Cana?
no, not consoling, um, not conflicting. What is that word? I'm trying to think of. Like,
Convicting?
yeah, convicting. Yeah, convicting the soul of, wow, like it's actually not okay for me and my spouse to be using artificial means to avoid pregnancy. That is a moral evil. And that moral evil, as we see in all evil, right? Like as the family goes, so goes the church. Like if our marriages are wrought with evil and our intimate union that images God is wrought with evil, well, then surely, like, there's going to be the fruit of our love is life, and that life is vocation. So if the tree, I mean, sorry for all the Protestant people if we have Protestant listeners, but like, the tree is not going to bear good fruit. It's not going to bear good fruit. So yeah, I just feel like that is something that gets me a little like perturbed when we want to talk about vocations. It's like, well, then, like, how are families doing? How are the families doing in our parishes?
Right.
Are the couples aligned? Are we following church teachings? Because if you want, great, you've got great, faith formation programs for the teens and the kids and all the things, but there's the couples over there dying in sin because they don't know the truth and the beauty and they're not following it. And yeah, anyway, I think it's hard, I guess, to hold these two at the same time. Although you can do it. It's just rationally, I think it's hard sometimes to say, like, obviously, God's all powerful. God can work through our mistakes. God can reach kids. But it's a lot easier though, is if we don't obstruct that and we cooperate and we know as parents what our role is as Catholic Christian couples. Does that make sense, Emily?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's working with God, not
Right.
in not un not unknowingly working against him.
Right.
We don't, a lot of times we're not thinking about, I mean, our humanness, that happens all the time, but like to do it outright. Yeah.
And getting to the root, right? Like, okay, we're
Mhm.
having a vocation issue. Well, we're having like more than the majority of married couples we know use birth control. Like that could maybe be a root cause. Like just saying, if we got to the root and address that, we might have more flourishing. Our kids
Uh,
aren't properly catechized. Well, do the parents know the faith? Like, are we properly catechized? Are we able to teach them in the home about the faith? No. Okay, well then we got to go back to the parents. I think it's also, this is something I was talking to an upcoming guest we're having, but we were talking about just this dynamic within the church and how this is a tough conversation. It's a lot easier. We think oftentimes for adults to call out children or to instruct children. And it can be a lot more uncomfortable and challenging for peers to call each other out. And by peers, I mean fellow adults, even if it is a pastor needing to form his parishioners who are the parents and the adults. So anyway, I think that there's, a lot of reasons to hope. Obviously, we're of the post John Paul II generation, which is so encouraging and good. But yeah, I think the numbers still kind of speak for themselves that we're lacking. And I was listening to something this weekend too, Emily, about doctors or not doctor. He's just Stephen J. Shaw, and he has a documentary I haven't watched it yet called The Birth Gap, and it's about the dramatic decline that we have in the birth rate, like that countries all over the place are are dying, like our Western society is dying because we're not at replacement rate for birth. So it's just, yeah, it's just this culture of death. Like, you know,
Absolutely.
nothing can grow. There's no fertility. Fertility is life, fertile soil. So,
Speaking of root cause, I'm overwhelmed with the thought of that Mother Teresa quote when Hillary Clinton asked her why a woman hasn't been president. And she's like, she's probably been aborted, you know?
oh, did she really say?
Have you never heard that one?
Never
Yeah.
heard that. Wow,
Yeah.
that's
She
ballsy.
just, didn't miss a beat. Like, oh, she's probably been aborted. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, the root cause of, I mean, she's right, right?
Right. You
Like
never
she's
know.
right. And
Right.
it's saying, and it just makes me think of that for vocations, like what's going on in the family that those vocations aren't coming, let alone the physical aspect of contracepting, but
Right.
then this just the disposition.
Right. 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 Yeah. It's hard to try to teach our children to trust God when we are really struggling to trust God. So,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
marriages.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, okay. I guess that's it. Do you have anything else, Emily?
I made a note on section 34. I'd have to reread it. I don't know.
Okay. Oh, the
Um,
vocation of virginity and celibacy.
yes. I think this statement about the so it's talking about marriage and virginity, and the two situations are inseparable. When marriage is not esteemed, neither can consecrated virginity or celibacy exist. And it goes on to say when human sexuality is not regarded as a great value given by the Creator, the renunciation of it for the sake of the kingdom of heaven loses its meaning. Like, talk about root cause, like if this doesn't happen, this is not happening. And I just think it's so beautiful that the church can dig deep and really explain, okay, if we are in a situation like this is what's going on. This is how, and then giving us, which I know is coming, like suggestions for help with this, like as educators of the family, as parents of the family. I was just looking ahead before we hopped on and at just the sections, and I'm just like, this encyclical is really, it's really beautiful. They all, I don't think I've never read a bad one, but like this is just so, I guess it's just so specific to parents. And I think when you read something like that, it's very consoling and encouraging as a parent. Like the church really does have the answers and the antidotes to society.
Absolutely. I think this line in here, I'm glad you brought this up, is when sexuality is not regarded as a great value given by the Creator, the renunciation of it for the kingdom is not. It loses its meaning. And while I understand it's not helpful in a lot of ways to operate in like the spiritual realm, the eschatological realm, because our feet are here and we have to be practical on day-to-day basis, but like our head can still be there, right? Like our mind is in heaven, but our feet are on the ground. And regarding human sexuality, like our bodies as made in the image and likeness of God, and that great union we participate in as husband and wife, and the marital act and what that image is, like, unless we get and kind of understand and get excited about the beauty and the goodness of what that is, well, then, if we find something so beautiful, it's not, what am I trying to say? Joey and I talk about this a lot, like when we're talking about, or I think I brought it up before on the podcast when we were reading this book about Saint Joseph. People will talk about Saint Joseph, and he was maybe the theory of like, was he younger or older? And we would go back to like, well, it's not really that impressive if he wasn't engaging in intercourse with Mary, if he's like some old fart, like, and he probably didn't have too strong of a desire, and he was just old and kind of like a grandpa to her. What's more impressive if he's this like young, strapping, virile man, and
Gorgeous.
oh yeah, and he just has this awe about his view of Mary. He just is so enthralled with her. And out of great love, it's this great love that he denies himself to keep her in this perfectly pure state. And like almost like he's involved, but he's also detached because he sees the glory of God in this. And I think
Exactly.
that's the same thing. That's what makes the priestly and religious vocations so magnanimous, is because they understand the gift that human sexuality is. And they are saying, no, I'm going to not partake now, and I'm going to keep intact this beauty here because I'm going to wait for the ultimate fulfillment in heaven. Because everything here is just a foreshadowing of that. But I still get gratification from it because I recognize the beauty. So I think sometimes people think, oh, well, celibacy is this white knuckling. No, we're not talking abstinence. I think the white knuckling comes when we don't have one, like a conversion, right, by the power of the Holy Spirit, and that brought about by a full knowledge of who God made us to be as sexual beings. Those combined with our relationship with God lead to that renunciation, that act of renunciation, as being this profound gift to Christ and to the church, and so much more beautiful. Do you know what I mean,
Absolutely.
Emily?
Yes,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. I feel like this has come up before on the
Yeah.
podcast, and I love thinking about that. Like, yeah, yeah, I feel like you described it so beautifully.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah. Anyway, people just shouldn't see priests who are living out and consecrated religious who are living out celibacy for the sake of the kingdom as missing out in any way, really, because they're not. They're experiencing a fullness and an appreciation. They have an appreciation and an understanding of what it is they're not participating in, but that doesn't mean they don't value it anymore. I don't know. It's so hard. Well, I don't know. I feel like I can come up with a lot of analogies, but they'd all fall short, right? Like,
Right. Yes.
yeah,
Yes, I
you
do.
desire something beautiful and good, and you see it. Like, yeah, I'm just thinking like food wise, it's like a beautiful dessert or
Right.
something, and you don't partake in it, but that doesn't mean you don't understand how wonderful it is. It's a
Right.
joyful renunciation. It's not a white knuckle negative renunciation.
I'm sure that may not be the case every day for a
Right.
religious. Like,
Right.
I'm sure because they are in the world, right? Like, they're going to come in and out of the world naturally, as we all do,
Right.
that are striving for holiness, at least. And so, yeah, I mean, we're not trying to overstate that this is, something simple by any means, but I think that they have a very deep understanding of what they're doing,
And it's made simpler. All
even
virtue
if
is
it's
made
hard to.
simpler, right? The more we practice it, right? So I think you're right,
Yeah.
Emily. That's true. It's not maybe always going to be the simplest, but I imagine for a priest who's been doing this for 30 something years, like, it's probably very rarely, if ever, he really is like, plus he's plus he's had 38 years of hearing confession of married people. That he's probably like, you know what? I don't think I'm missing out.
I often think about that, like, wow, the things they must hear, and then for that to not affect them,
Right.
or for them to not judge, that would be a huge grace.
Well, and
Ooh.
to just have like a more like, lest they ever be tempted to get into like the fantasy world of married life, they're quickly brought back to reality working with married couples of like,
Absolutely.
yeah, this is a challenge too. Definitely a path to holiness and sanctification. So,
Yes.
anyway, yeah, great section. I can't wait. So the next section will start next week on mothers and fathers as the educators. So you guys have a good one. We'll see you next time. Bye, Emily.
Bye, Amy.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.